Chapter 17. The Mysterious Jewels. Daniel had been pacing the floor when Joel and Rachel arrived home the following day. He tried to measure his words carefully.
How was your trip? Did you get some good footage?
Asked Daniel as Joel and Rachel entered the living room.
It was very eventful,
said Joel, glancing cautiously at Rachel. They both felt exhausted from only a few hours of sleep during their flight.
I'll be able to let you know for sure once I get this set up. It's probably best if I just show you.
Joel reached over and plugged in his camera.
What's all of this, Rebecca?
Asked Rachel, pointing at some flowers and table covers decorating the vast dining room on the side of the mansion. Boiling pots and fresh food from the oven produced a variety of salty and sweet aromas that permeated the kitchen. Several Cohen family winery employees and distant relatives busied themselves with preparations. Martha and Susie had joined in their efforts as well.
It's for Lydia and Bill,
said Rebecca, hesitating. She began arranging some candles.
Lydia and I used to be quite close. I lost one of my best friends the day Daniel's family left.
Joseph and Rebecca have kindly offered to help us hold a memorial service for your mother and Bill,
said Daniel to his boys. Joel choked up a little, still not wanting to feel like his mom was gone.
Thank you, Uncle Joseph and Aunt Rebecca,
said Joel.
No need to thank us. Your mother was a wonderful lady. From what I hear about Bill, he was a great friend to your dad. I'm just sorry that we lost all those years to have our families together,
said Joseph. He reached over, gave Joel a one-armed bear hug, and ruffled his hair. Joel felt like a beanpole next to his uncle. He was glad to have his uncle's family around. Although their mother's death had left an enormous hole in their hearts, reuniting with their long-lost family seemed to soften the blow a little.
It's good to be here with you all,
said Joel as they sat down. He looked up and started scanning the room.
Where's Davy? When we landed, I got his text saying he has some news to share.
Davy and Adam have been doing archaeological research around the family estate. He also said that he would research Prism for you,
said Joseph. He grinned, remembering when he and Daniel were about their age, and Joseph would try to imitate Daniel as well. About that time, Davy rushed into the room and gave Joel a great big hug. Chester joined in, licking Joel's face and sniffing his clothes closely due to the scent of another dog and foreign travels. Adam followed and stood behind them timidly. John, Caleb, and Levi trailed in and sat down with the others.
Thank goodness you both made it,
said Davy.
What do you mean?
Asked Joel. He wondered if Davy knew anything about what had happened in the tunnel.
The explosion at Prism, of course. I just read about it,
said Davy, looking at him intently.
Yes, there was a small explosion, but we made it out. Thanks be to God,
said Joel. He reached down to turn on his camera. He knew that he would have to explain more, but thought it would be better to review the footage first. Their dad was already upset.
Yes, Toda Yeshua,
said Daniel with heightened concern. Joseph looked at Daniel with astonishment.
Joel, I had no idea how dangerous that place is. What in the world have you gotten yourself into?
I'm not sure yet, Dad. My boss wanted me to research this place for some reason.
Joel looked awkwardly at Rachel and continued setting up his camera.
I bet he did. Well, you won't be able to go back. They are closing off our borders anyway,
said Daniel.
What, why?
Asked Joel.
There's been an outbreak of a new virus,
said John.
Starting Monday, it's mandatory face masks again.
Yes, the vineyard has been so busy that we've already sold out today,
Joseph added.
Our coach called and said that there likely would be no baseball this year,
said Adam. Davy, Caleb, and Levi all shook their heads in disappointment.
The police have extra patrol on our borders too,
said Daniel.
After that small earthquake when you left, we could hear the IDF and the Iron Dome intercepting attacks against us late last night. We were worried sick when we couldn't reach you in France. I don't know how you both made it back in one piece.
I'm so sorry, Dad. We didn't mean to worry you. We had no idea,
said Joel.
Thank God that you all are okay too.
He placed his hand on his dad's shoulder, and it was evident that Daniel was shaken, especially after losing Lydia. Joel knew that something devastating must have happened in Jerusalem by the way his dad had been pacing.
Nothing new, though, Daniel. It was just some small, rudimentary bombs sent over by the Palestinians. They try the same old tricks every year at this time. The Iron Dome can handle that, no problem.
John tried to reassure them.
Well, I suppose so. Rachel, it looks like you may be stuck with us again for a while,
said Daniel.
That suits me fine.
She said, smiling.
Yes, we have plenty of spare rooms for you to use, so there is no need to worry. Separate from this guy, of course,
Yosef said, teasing Joel. Yosef grinned at the younger boys, holding back their snickering.
Thank you for your hospitality,
said Rachel. She glanced sarcastically at Davy, who took every opportunity to tease her and Joel.
Great.
She thought.
Davy and his entourage of juveniles.
Actually, she didn't mind that much. They somehow kept everyone in a lighter mood despite everything that had happened. However, she saw Davy tap Joel's shoulder, whisper something, and exchange his.
Wait till you hear what else happened while you were gone.
Look,
Rachel, dear, can you give me a hand for a moment?
called Rebecca from the kitchen. Rebecca's face looked worn as she hastily pinned back her dark hair.
I hate to ask, but we only have a few more hours until the rest of the family begins arriving. Today will be the last day we can get together for a while.
Of course,
Rachel said as she got up and went to the dining room. She joined Martha and Susie, who were preparing the table.
I'm glad you all made it out safely,
said John, patting Joel's back. Joel smiled at their uncle. Since he was a few years older than Davy, he clearly remembered the days when their uncle came to visit when they were young. Unlike many older adults his age, he had the ability and took the time to play ball with him and Davy.
Tell us about that explosion, Joel,
said Daniel.
Let me show you how it went from our area. We had to take shelter underground, but I don't think it was any better than staying inside the building.
Joel linked his camera to the TV and began playing the footage. He fast-forwarded his interview with Dr. Pandora and hit play right before the explosion. All the guys watched in awe as they saw them escape down the tunnel, and everything on the screen went black. They began to hear eerie shrieks and the massive growl. There were flashes of Joel's watch lighting up and his fist propelling upward. Chester started barking at the screen, and Davy barely calmed him as he held him in his arms. John's face began to grow grim in recognition of their enemy from his own battle within dismal tunnels not long ago. Then the women from the kitchen joined them in watching the footage.
Wait, Joel, rewind that piece,
said Rachel. Joel went back a few seconds, during the part when they started to pray, and the ring began to glow. There was a quick glimpse of a shadowy figure fading away. At first it appeared like a giant serpent, its scaly skin slithering nearly as wide as the tunnel itself.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven.
Joel slowed it down and zoomed in. Then they saw it, a face. It was faint, but there was a metallic face like a dragon glaring down from the top of the tunnel. Though difficult to see, it seemed to shrink and transform into a man's twisted and mangled countenance before disappearing completely.
Did it? Did that snake transform into the man with the twisted face?
Yelled Davy. Rachel grimaced and reached out for Joel.
What is happening? Who or what is that man?
You've seen him before?
Asked John.
Yes, back in Indiana and here in Jerusalem,
said Joel.
His face. It was like Dad's when...
began Caleb. However, Martha signaled him to stop talking about it in front of Levi, who had started covering his ears.
If I hadn't told Dad about that crop circle, he would have come home. He would still be alive if it wasn't for me,
yelled Levi. He separated himself from the boys, and Susie sat beside him, attempting to comfort him to no avail.
You are in great danger,
said Yosef, more serious than ever. He exchanged a sober glance with John and Daniel.
What do you know about this creature?
Asked Joel.
That ring you have, let me see it,
said Yosef. Joel got out the ring and showed it to him. Yosef motioned to Rebecca to hold out her hand. On her finger was a ring identical to Joel's. She took it off for further inspection.
Do you see the gemstones in these rings? They are from the same cut. You can literally place them side by side and they would fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, particularly with the curious engravings inside the stones. The ones in our watches are the same way.
Joel examined the stones closely. He and Rachel noticed the center stone on both rings was the same as the one on her necklace. Each golden ring enclosed a dominant circular sapphire within a spiral of smaller diamonds and amethysts. The gemstones seemed drawn toward each other, almost like they were magnetic. Joel could tell that something was engraved, but when he touched the stone surfaces, they were perfectly smooth. It was as if the engravings were embedded inside the stones themselves. Turning both rings and the necklace, he could see that they all had the same relief inscription encircling their golden settings that his mother had told him about. The men's watches had the same inscriptions that matched perfectly. They were all in Hebrew.
Mom, didn't Dad used to have that same type of watch?
Caleb started to ask Susie, but she motioned for him to be quiet and listen.
Kodesh Ladonai, holiness to the Lord.
Daniel said.
I'll never forget when I gave that ring to your mother. From the first moment I saw her, I knew she was the one.
He looked at Joel with tears in his eyes.
She knew that you and Rachel are meant to be together, so she passed it on to you.
Joel and Rachel exchanged a tender glance.
Don't waste any time, son. It is the most precious thing.
Yes, Ahava. Love is the most precious thing one can have in life,
said a feeble voice. They were all surprised and turned around. It was Daniel and Yosef's mother.
Imats,
said Daniel. She rolled to a stop in her wheelchair as all eyes fell on her. Her curly gray hair was matted on one side of her bandages as if she had just awoken from a long sleep. She reached out her pale, feeble hands toward Joel. He felt that she still had strength in her grip around his wrist, although her frail fingers were cold. She carefully cupped Joel's hands to get a better look at the jewels. And then, letting go, she stared ahead blankly and began to speak.
Years ago, your Abba gave me one of those rings. It was the most beautiful night when he asked me to marry him. The night was so clear that the stars seemed like crystals floating all around us. Then a storm began to form. A strange man showed up asking questions. His face seemed deformed and was covered with a large bandage. He demanded to have my ring. He reached into his pocket. I thought he would rob us, but your Abba, he would not let that man get in our way. So he hit him in the face repeatedly. By the time he was finished, his white bandage was all bloody and mangled. The man swore he would get even, but your Abba just kept swinging until he was unconscious. His forehead had a black, twisted wound that bled anew.
She winced at the memory, but continued.
Then we saw something in his hand. Another ring with a band identical to mine. The ring on my finger was glowing, but the large stone on the man's ring looked dark and tarnished. Your Abba took the ring from the man's finger, calling him a liar and a worthless thief. That man had stolen the ring and nearly killed your Abba for it years before. After retrieving the ring, your Abba gave him one final kick. Then he took me by the hand and we left.
But the stones look the same now. Both have a brilliant glow about them,
said Joel.
Did you ever see that man again?
What?
That man, did you ever see him again?
What was I talking about?
She blinked hard as if she had been stung.
Why, who are you, young man?
I'm your grandson, Joel.
No,
she said with her voice uplifted.
I don't have any grandchildren.
Adam looked at her with sadness and sat down, his countenance fallen. John's hopeful expression and his sister's potential recovery turned to concern.
Ema, would you like something to eat?
Asked Rebecca.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm rather hungry. It's almost ready now. I'll set your place at the table.
Rebecca rolled her way into the dining room.
Has she been this way the whole time, Yosef?
Asked Joel.
Yes, that same man attacked her not long ago,
said John.
Her memory has been greatly affected by her head injury. I don't think he will ever stop harassing our family.
The man with the twisted face did it?
Asked Joel. A nod from Yosef and Daniel confirmed it.
It happened shortly after Abba died. I have always wondered if he wasn't somehow involved in Abba's death. Although he had a stroke, there was evidence of massive head trauma on the back of his skull. His onyx stone on his shield, the one from the portrait, has been missing ever since.
Yosef pointed to Abba's elaborate shield that hung over the mantel. Its stone was missing in the center.
That man has made several appearances since then. Also, Ema had started showing signs of memory loss before the attack in town.
Sometimes Savta thinks I'm you, Dad,
Adam said. Rebecca sat beside Adam, patting his leg.
You said we were in great danger,
said Joel.
What else should we know about this man? How can he mutate into that giant creature?
I have never seen him transform until now, but I can imagine that he is connected to those science experiments at Prism. Years ago, when I proposed to Rebecca, she and I had a similar experience with a man like Emma described,
said Yosef.
His face was twisted, just like the man you and Rachel have in your video. I thought he would rob us, but we managed to escape from him.
Is that the first time you saw him?
Asked Rachel.
No, and there seem to be more people like him working together,
said Yosef.
Yes, there are. I was at the market the other day and saw one of them,
said Rebecca.
They always wear black. My ring begins to glow when they get near me. If they start chasing me, I cannot explain it. It is as if God communicates through the ring to show when he is protecting me. If an enemy is about to attack, something might fall on him or he might get struck by a car.
I always try to stay with her when we leave the house. But there have been a few times throughout the years where, well, thank God that he's always protecting us,
said Yosef, looking up with concern.
Dad, you and Mom must have had the same thing happen, right?
Asked Davy.
Well, not exactly,
said Daniel.
I remember seeing him approaching me and your mother, but before he could reach us, Abba got there first. He ripped me up and down for proposing to your mother. He wouldn't have any son of his marrying a Christian.
Well, that part is all in the past,
said Yosef.
Before I could get Lydia away, he began fighting with Abba, as he had always done throughout the years,
said Daniel.
That man has been a menace to our family as long as I can remember.
By this point, Levi was too upset and had left the room. Susie spoke up.
Do you know for sure that this is the man who chased you back in Indiana?
Susie asked Joel with concern.
Yes,
said Joel, looking at Rachel and Davy.
We do not doubt that it's him.
He has to be the one that killed our dad,
said Caleb with determination.
It only makes sense with the way his face looked when...
He cut off, visibly upset.
If I ever find that thing, I'll...
Caleb gripped his fist tightly.
We'll be ready for him as best as we can be,
said John, nodding.
That's for sure. I'll make some calls to have extra patrols placed around here tonight.
He immediately began dialing his phone and stepped outside.
How is John doing after...
Daniel trailed off.
As well as can be expected. That's why he started working with those archaeologists years ago. He was hoping to find her,
said Yosef.
Who?
Asked Joel.
His wife Naomi. She disappeared years ago, and no one ever found her,
said Daniel.
We now suspect that the same man with the twisted face was behind it,
said Yosef.
Best not to mention it. John still gets emotional. He deals with it by trying to protect the rest of us.
Joel contemplated how much important family history they had missed from their years apart.
I had better make a call as well,
said Yosef, walking off to the side and dialing his phone. Rachel remembered the mirror with its Hebrew writing back at Prism.
Daniel, would you mind looking at this picture?
Asked Rachel, holding her phone.
What's this? It looks like quite an expensive mirror.
Yes, I would say that it is. Do you see the engravings here? Are they in Hebrew?
Yes, but it appears to be an ancient form of Hebrew. Yosef would know more about the old language, but it seems to say entrance of the north gate of the inner court. Look at the details of the golden frame and the precious jewels. Where did you take this?
At Prism,
replied Rachel.
I know your parents work there,
said Daniel,
but I want you both to avoid going there again. There's more than what you have encountered in their tunnels. I hear Dr. Crowning is in charge of that place, and he is likely more of a danger to us than you realize.
I agree,
said Yosef, ending his call. Rachel looked at Joel and winced, knowing that her mom would disagree. She would act as if nothing was wrong and try to get her to go back. Joel held Rachel's hand tenderly.
May I see?
Asked Yosef. Rachel handed Yosef her phone.
Yes, Daniel is correct in his interpretation.
Yosef examined the precious stones and noticed they were similar to their family jewels. Then one of them caught his eye. A large black onyx stone was centered at the bottom of the mirror.
I wonder...
He zoomed in and saw the familiar ancient Hebrew letters.
Daniel, take a look at this.
Daniel looked and recognized it immediately. His countenance turned from curiosity to anger.
Those dirty...
He marched outside of the room, still holding the phone in his hand. John got off his phone and joined all the others who followed Daniel to the portrait of Saul, their family patriarch. His stern face in the picture mirrored Daniel's expression. Yosef, Daniel, and John located a magnifying glass and compared the Hebrew inscriptions of the onyx stone in the portrait with the one on the mirror, an exact match. Joel spoke up.
What are the chances it's a different onyx stone with the same inscriptions?
I would say the odds are about a 0% chance,
said Daniel sternly.
There are only 2 onyx stones like this in the world. Both have different inscriptions. Each of them has the names of the tribes of Israel engraved in a specific manner,
began Yosef.
Yeah,
agreed John, and he quoted Exodus 28:10.
6 of their names on one stone, and the other 6 names of the rest on the other stone, according to their birth.
You don't think it's just a replica?
asked Rachel.
Hardly,
said Yosef.
No one outside our family has ever handled these stones except the man with the twisted face when he stole one. The other is locked away safely. Besides, look at the identical shape of the gemstone and each curve of the inscriptions.
Yosef used the magnifying glass to verify this. Rachel and the others squinted to see, and the identical quality was unmistakable.
What are the odds that the twisted man stole this stone from our family, and less than a year later it shows up at the Prism facility?
asked Daniel. Everyone could see that Rachel and Joel grew tense since her parents worked there.
Oh, I'm not blaming you or your parents for this, Rachel. I would never accuse them of something so terrible. However, the man with the twisted face is somehow connected to that facility. From Joel's video, we can see the proof that he is there.
Rachel shook her head that she understood. John's voice deepened in revulsion.
I can tell you without a doubt that he is connected with the main people in charge at Prism.
Something in his eyes told Joel that John knew this from experience. Rachel began questioning her parents' true background since they always kept her in the dark about their work until now. However, since her dad was a Christian, she could not believe he would fall for working with people who would steal and murder.
Doesn't the Bible also talk about a north gate?
asked Joel.
Maybe it is a clue for the mirror's inscription.
Yes, I believe it is Ezekiel,
said Daniel.
Here is one passage in Ezekiel 8, verses 4-6,
said Joel. He began reading from a Bible app on his phone.
4. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel was there, according to the vision that I saw in the plain. 5. Then said he unto me, Son of man, lift up thine eyes now the way toward the north. So I lifted up mine eyes the way toward the north, and behold northward at the gate of the altar this image of jealousy in the entry. 6. He said furthermore unto me, Son of man, seest thou what they do? Even the great abominations that the house of Israel committeth here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary. But turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations.
Yes, that is a prophecy God gave to Ezekiel, showing that he would allow their temple to be destroyed due to Israel's idolatry. Even the priests were involved,
said Yosef.
And history is supposed to repeat itself in the future. As Dr. Crowning announced, Israel is about to reconstruct the temple once again,
said Daniel.
I saw soldiers excavating massive foundation stones on our way from town yesterday.
And once again, be led astray by idolatry and then the Antichrist,
said Davy.
You didn't exactly get permission to take that picture, did you, Rach?
Rachel shook her head no, and everyone looked at her with concern.
Yosef, I know that you and Rebecca haven't exactly seen eye to eye with us, but I wish you would,
said Daniel.
Yeshua HaMashiach. Please think about it, Yosef. Jesus will return soon.
Yosef looked from Daniel toward Rebecca, his heart heavy with guilt, and his eyes fell to the ground. Martha looked concerned about this conversation, being an Orthodox Jew. However, since Bill's death, Susie had not felt as devout about religion. Guilt had spread across her face when she saw the confused look on Caleb's face. She walked away and left the foyer to console Levi. Rachel looked at her phone again and received a notification.
Joel, take a look at this.
Damascus is no longer a city but a heap of ruins.
Joel read aloud.
What? I knew there was something more behind those attacks last night,
said Daniel.
There's so much happening now that you'll never catch all the news stories,
said Davy as Joel busily checked his messages.
What a tragic waste,
said Yosef, placing his head in his hands as Rebecca turned on the news. Graphic images of leveled buildings and bodies strewn about in the rubble filled the screen, one after another.
we bring you tragic news from Damascus, Syria.
This fighting must come to an end.
John pulled out his Bible and pointed a passage out to Daniel.
Listen to this,
Said Daniel.
All we have to do is look at our ancient prophecies to follow today's headlines.
He had his Bible open and began reading.
Isaiah 17, the burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap.
The family continued to listen to Daniel as he read the ancient biblical prophecies, finding fulfillment before their eyes.